Everything can be reduced to right and wrong. Make no mistake about it. We are talking about Christianizing America.
That which God has given us, He will allow no one to take away.
The Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade.
That's a blessing!
We will make America great again.
It's time for us, people, to come out of the churches!
Christian nationalism uses religion to justify all kinds of evils.
Christian nationalism has been a political tool for centuries.
It has nothing to do with Christianity. It's about power and politics.
The goal is to enshrine Christian identity as the law of the land.
To reclaim the United States for God.
You can't take over society unless you take over the 7 pillars, and they've gone one by one to do it.
We want total war.
We are the Christian Taliban.
We need to force the people to believe what we believe.
When government is in the hands of godly men, it is good. But in the hands of all others, it is evil.
So Leon Botstein hired you, Steve?
Yeah, he hired me to start a film department at Franconia College, which was this little hippy-dippy college in New Hampshire that he was at the age of 24 was the youngest college president in the country. This is in the early 70s. So
wow.
I came up there.
Wait, my understanding, see, I arrived at Bard College in 1982. Maybe 81 fall of it. No, I think it was 82. It's hard to remember. And it was his second year there. And he was, noted as the youngest college president. Yeah. Are you saying he was a college president elsewhere first?
Yeah, at Franconia.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
He became the president of Franconia College in 1970, and he was 24 years old.
And he recruited you?
Yeah. I'd been teaching. I taught briefly at Brandeis. I just got back from 6 years in Europe, and I got booted out of Brandeis for doing an anti-war film that they felt was offended their donors, and it was anyway. So Leon hired me. I bought a whole lot of equipment, and I started making documentaries with them and teaching. And Leon's great. Leon's great.
Yeah. Supposedly retiring.
Is he? Oh God. He's too much energy.
So he'll be conducting all the time,
He'll be conducting,
right.
That's right.
Yeah. So I was the radio station is just near Bard. It's in Red Hook, just 5 minutes from Bard. And I was living till about, I don't know, in the last year right by there as well. So but now I'm up a little further. I'm on right across the river from Hudson, New York.
Yeah.
So
our daughter's getting married outside Hudson in June.
Well, what should I wear? That sounds.
What you have on is fine.
What Copac or like something like?
No, it's a Livingston estate.
Livingston Estate, right? So, yeah, I know exactly. I drive by there every day, practically on my way to work. So there you go.
Beautiful.
Yeah, no, I love it. We'll go to the film and talk about what we're actually supposed to in a moment. But I left the city after decades and decades, and I'm so happy I did. This suits me really well. I always, I had a suspicion it would. But so I was saying to Steve, and again, it's Ujlaki.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, that this is a subject which just rankles me. It just bothers me so deeply. And I listen to way too many, pro-democracy slash political podcast that where, you know, this is a main subject, you know, the fake Christian. And I'm not even saying all the subjects. And in fact, I'll be clear that I don't believe some of the subjects in your documentary, Steve, are fake Christians per se. Even though I don't think they're necessarily, my personal opinion is they're not teaching the you know,
the gospel.
The gospel exactly according to Jesus. But I'm sure, I do believe they are true believers. But some of them are what I see also are a lot of people that are just you know, fakes. And so it just bothers me so much on a personal level. So when I saw that this was your documentary, I really felt compelled to invite you guys on. So thank you very much.
Great.
And I'm hoping this is a little bit cathartic, but if it's not, that's fine too. And I'll say I want to read, just to let people know who you are. And this is from the website. I'm not going to pretend I wrote this myself. You are an award-winning investigative journalist who's written extensively about human rights and the defiance of totalitarian regimes. You're the author of Shadow Network, Media, Money, and the Secret Hub. Oh, I'm sorry. You are the author of Shadow Network, Media, Money, and the Secret Hub of the Radical Right. The film's unprecedented expose of the covert Council of National Policy and its top secret membership roles was made possible by her. Anyway, I shouldn't be reading this without my glasses on. I apologize. But you're a journalist and you are one of the subjects in the film, and you participated, you know, in the film. And Steve, you are the filmmaker. You have do you have a co-director? Is that right?
Yeah, a co-director, co-producer. I'm the whom I hired when I just started out. So I'm the writer, producer, director, and we spent so many years working on it that he is now co-director, co-producer. But I'm the primary person. I finance the film.
Wow. Well, good on you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
with help.
That's you're doing God's work. No pun intended. I mean, my gosh. So Steve, do tell me a little bit more of the backstory for why you were compelled to make the film and to actually sink your own money into it.
Well, I was dean at the Loyola Marymount University Film School, as I mentioned earlier, actually from 2010 to 2018. And in 2016, when Trump got elected, I was shocked, but I didn't think it was possible. I thought he was an obvious con artist. And anyway, clearly I didn't really know what was happening in the country. And when I stopped being dean in 2018, I started researching evangelicals, because obviously the evangelicals were the ones who had put him over the top. So I did a lot of research, and it turns out that the whole history of the Republican Party and the evangelicals goes back into the late 70s, early 80s, and how Reagan got elected. And the whole history was unfolded before me, showing how we got to this point. So it was, I learned a great deal. And I was fortunate at a certain point to read Anne's book. And so it went beyond just a history of evangelical, but it went into how it was used, how people used it as a cover for their own economic, political self-interest. And a very deeply researched book. And so I'm very happy to have had the opportunity to do that, and that Anne was willing to come on the film and be a real big part of the story.
And talk a little bit about how this subject ended up being so central in your journalism.
Well, I grew up mostly in Oklahoma.
Okay,
in
that's enough said.
Done. Next.
Yes. Exactly. Nice.
And in fact, my book Shadow Network opens with how it started for me, which was driving to Walmart in Oklahoma when I was visiting my family with the radio on, and finding that there was this fundamentalist radio show It was supposed to be some kind of a religious program on a religious station, but it was very openly campaigning against a Democratic candidate with using false information, like patently false information. And so I thought, given that they're probably tax exempt, how does this work? And like Stephen, when Trump won against the expectations of the major media and most of the minor media, I went back to this research and started what I call pulling its strings. And I found that the radio station in my hometown connected to a radio network, which connected to Salem Media, which has thousands of stations and gives content to thousands more, but not on the coast where the people we live among would tend to be aware of it. And that not only that, the people who owned Salem Media and these other radio networks broadcasting this extreme right-wing and often fallacious content belonged to something called the Council for National Policy and served as the media arm of an umbrella organization. So by the time I peeled back the history of the last 40 years, I found that they had big donors, among them the DeVos family of Michigan, fossil fuel interests in Texas and Oklahoma, the Bradley Foundation in Milwaukee, and that these donors met with their strategists like Richard Viguerie and Ralph Reed and others a few times a year, along with their media people, and crafted political campaigns under the guise of running a nonprofit, quote unquote, educational organization. And this could have been simply an historical curiosity had they not gotten behind Donald Trump at a crucial moment in June 2016 that I describe, and tell him, we know that you don't have a ground game, you don't have a war chest, you don't have canvassers, you don't have a strategy. We have all of those that we can give you, but we have a wish list. And that is our nominees for the federal courts, including the Supreme Court, our fundamentalist pastors for your religious advisory committee, which will not contain other religions. And then we get to write some of the Republican platform, which will be extremely anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ, and really compose the most socially conservative Republican platform in the last 80 years. And Trump really didn't care about this. He said, part of the deal, we're on, and he delivered. So we've seen them emerge as stronger and stronger actors over the last 8 years. And I'm really grateful to Stephen's film for bringing this to this new audience and visualizing how it's operated.
A couple of things, and this is to either both of you guys. One is, did you think Ronald Reagan had the same feelings? Like, do you think he really cared, or was it all just about getting elected? Do you at any cost at that point, or do you feel, that he was compelled for religious, moral reasons?
Reagan had no religious commitment that anyone could discern.
Yeah,
he'd been a cigarette advertiser and a drinker and a divorced
multi-married
Hollywood actor.
Right,
but he knew how to deliver his lines.
And he announced his nomination in a part of Mississippi that was like the hotbed of KKK and extremism, right-wing religious extremism, just to get the message across at whose side he was on. So he was anything but he played the game.
Well, sure. It all starts with Reagan, right? It's very cynical, considering that, which is ironic, considering that he was often just, sort of, for so many people, an emblem of, positivity and, anyway, he was
an actor. He was an actor. There was
turns out not as bad as we thought.
Exactly.
One thing I wanted to also touch upon was Peter Coyote. I just, as somebody who's admired his voice work for so long, please tell me how you ended up getting Peter Coyote on the project.
Well, there were a couple of different ways we got to Peter. I knew Peter from when I was living and working at the San Francisco State Film Department prior to being in LA, and I knew him through that. Chris Jones, the co-director,
right.
When I was dean, I arranged for a number of grad students to do internships with Ken at Ken's in New Hampshire. And Chris was one of those people, and that's where he met Peter at one point. So he actually was the one who reached out to him, as I did through another avenue. And then Peter was great. Peter was, he has his own studio. He doesn't charge anything.
Yes.
He basically.
Is that true? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, if he believes in the project, I mean, this was not and I was fortunate enough to get a number of people who didn't, if not pro bono, did much less than their fee because they felt that the film was important. But Peter was great. Peter was great. That's how we got to Peter. And a lot of people love his voice. So that's good.
The film is called Bad Faith, Christian Nationalism's War on Democracy, and it is going to be out theatrically, which is just pretty impressive at this point in time to get a film in theaters of any kind of documentary or smaller film is quite a feat. But it'll be having theatrical runs in LA and New York.
Yeah, so in fact, it opens this today at the Lemley Monica for a week.
Okay.
And then in New York at the Cinema Village on April 5th for a week. So
we'll make sure to promote that for sure.
Yeah. And it streams at the end of April. So I don't, in terms of the timing of when you want to do this, it goes broad in streaming at the end of April.
Very good. On multiple, I assume on multiple platforms. And yeah. You have a number of folks in the film that were really being very forthcoming. And did you try? I mean, there was one I know, pastor, who was from the. I'm not sure if I remember if he was a Christian nationalist himself, because most of the pastors and or a number of the ones that are in the footage anyway that you show are Christian nationalists. Wouldn't you say? Is that fair to say?
Yes.
There was maybe one of them who gave you some time for an interview. Is that?
Yes, we had Ken, Pastor Ken, I forget his last name now, who was outside of Nashville. He started off in Oregon. He was big at showing up at Planned Parenthood places and lobbying and making it impossible for people to get through. That was part of his activism.
Right.
And then he branched out. He started another church in Lenore, I guess it's called, outside of Nashville. And he was extremely interested in promoting what he did and his work and so forth.
But so, he knew your film's agenda, I assume.
I think he did. I'm sure he realized it's hard to know people's motivation. He may have felt that any publicity was good publicity for him. He certainly,
Right. I kind of remember. I remember where I was going before, which is the Christian nationalist movement has come to a point where, and this is what I hear frequently, where they believe, let's say with Donald Trump, for instance, who they know, I mean, there's no hiding Trump's past, his values or lack thereof, et cetera, right? So, but they can now justify their end goal because it's at any cost, right? That's their rationale, right? That it doesn't matter how they get there as long as they get there to their goals. Correct? Right. No matter how unchristian, say, like a Donald Trump is, or a Lauren Boebert, or however many of these other folks.
Well, Anne, you should talk about Cyrus.
Talk about, yeah, please do.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I even have a medallion that shows Trump and the Persian King Cyrus of the Old Testament in profile. And the way
I remember that.
A lot of the evangelical leaders were never Trumpers, really, right on up to the summer of 2016. And they found themselves in an awkward position because he was the nominee. And so they had to explain to their flocks how this pivot was going to work. And the language they came up with was Trump is not a man of God, he's an instrument of God. The same way that Persian King Cyrus ended up serving the purposes of the Jews in the Old Testament. And so they promoted this idea, and along the way, Trump happily embraced some of the more extravagant trappings of Christianity. For example, a couple of days ago, he announced that he has a MAGA Bible that he's hawking for $60 with an American flag.
Excuse me, Anne, $59.95 or 99,
right. $59.99. Yeah, and so you don't even. I mean, there are a lot of Christians who are just aghast. And of course, the Christian Twitterverse is full of people quoting, the money changers in the temple verses.
Right.
But then others are saying, wait, we have been told that we should be single issue voters on abortion, for example, and he's giving us what we want. We've been told we should be single issue voters to be anti-trans, and that's being played loudly. And the point of the book and the film both are that when you have strategists and canvassers and a media system that wraps around the voters in these critical swing states, you can swing enough evangelical votes to tip it over in states that are crucial, like North Carolina and Georgia and Arizona. Sure. So part of what you need to admire in terms of the sheer competence is how well they have targeted and really militarized these narrow blocks of voters to win electoral college and Senate votes.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it's hard to be not respect on a certain level the amount of incredible organization that has gone into this for the last 40 years or so.
I also think this sets both the book and Bad Faith, the film, apart from a lot of the work on Christian nationalism, because it doesn't go into the other parts of the machine. And if you just say, oh, those terrible evangelicals, you don't get the information about the big donors, the mega donors, many of whom are not religious at all.
Like Koch brothers.
Koch brothers are very prominent in this story.
Right.
And
so half of them are dead.
You miss the journalistic term of follow the money.
Right. Hey, another real question. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but one other question, or where does this fit in? There's also this other, I don't know if it's how broad this belief is in the Christian nationalist movement, or even in, among the Christians in that, in the film, but is this idea of how wealth is the wealthy are rewarded or reward the true believers are rewarded with wealth, right? Like that's, and those who don't have are failed to be good Christians, or, I mean, this idea, it's just like another way of rationalizing behavior, correct?
Yeah, it goes back to Calvin, John Calvin, the theologian, who said, God will favor those he loves. So if you're rich, that means God loves you. And that has played into modernity with what's called the prosperity gospel.
The prosperity, thank you for clarifying. Yeah. Yeah.
So that idea is that if you give your money to a preacher, that God will find a way to give it back to you tenfold. And some unscrupulous people have gotten very rich off this idea.
Mm-hmm. But it also feels like I'm sorry?
The preachers have gotten rich.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, sure. And they could sleep better knowing that their prosperity, what?
The prosperity gospel.
Gospel. Thank you for that.
Yeah, the widows and orphans haven't done so well with it.
Well, so okay, again, the film is called Bad Faith: Christian Nationalism, or Christian Nationalism's War on Democracy. Again, it's opening in New York next. What'd you say, next week? Next Friday?
Yeah, that's right. On April 5th, next Friday.
April 5th, Friday, April 5th. It's today as we speak, even though this will already have happened. It's already having a theatrical at Lemley. Which Lemley was it?
Yeah, the Lemley Monica.
The Lemley Monica, my favorite of all the Lemleys. And then it will and then we'll also promote once again that this important documentary is also going to be available on streaming platforms sometime in April. And once it is, we can make sure people know that it's out there.
Adam, can I ask you something? What did you find the most striking thing about the film?
Most what?
Striking that you didn't know, or that you sort of altered the way you saw things, if it did. Please.
The depth of the organization of this movement is really had a great impact, as I watched it, I think, on me. And and so I really want to recommend it to as many people as possible. It's so important as we, of course, are coming up to this. I mean, do either of you feel that any of these folks are, I mean, where do you see this going in terms of how it's going to impact this election in about 7 months?
You mean the film?
Yeah. Well, just, I mean.
Or just in general?
Yeah, in general.
I don't know. Anne, what do you think?
I like to think that it's not as large a movement or as powerful a movement, that they think it is, but maybe I'm
Adam, let me just say one thing. It has the Republican Party has been taken over by it. So it has all of the trappings and the power and the money and the institutional position. This has never happened before. This is not a bunch of fringe players. That's part of the story of the film.
But there's a lot of incompetent people in places of government at the moment, right? And there's also, I mean, in terms of the MAGA movement, and if they're like those are the people that they're relying on, they have reason to be nervous, like that their movement is in the hands of a lot of incompetent people. That's one thought, anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the front people can be the clowns of the circus. You've got people working for places like the Koch network and
which we don't see very much, right? Of course.
Oh, we don't see that at all. And they are capable of looking at the landscape strategically and deciding where they're going to pour in $10 million here and $10 million there. And because they're networked so effectively, they can make the gears mesh. Now, in terms of the numbers, go back to the last two presidential elections, which have been decided by votes. Biden was decided by 42,000 votes in 3 states. Okay. So you don't have to swing very many votes to win the electoral college, but you have to be strategic about where you put your manpower and how you go after voting blocks in specific places. And that's the whole strategic end of it. And what we don't see on the East and the West Coast is people in these states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan driving around in their cars over long distances with the radio on, with these fundamentalists and right-wing talk shows blasting messages at them that are reinforced in their church and reinforced in their social media, and swinging them to vote often directly against their own self-interest. Right?
But aren't there also
to defund their schools? They're voting to contaminate their landscape, but the messaging is very powerful.
Oh, no denying that. But also, women are also, or families are also driving even greater distances just to find an abortion clinic, and I think that's important too. I think that has repercussions.
They're probably listening to different radio stations.
Maybe, hopefully, I don't know that that's true though. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, what might, steer the election. So because even, people that self-identify as Christians accidentally get pregnant sometimes,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you both for taking time out in your day or your evening, and I appreciate it. And if you're in the area, I hope to run into you. Enjoy the wedding. Enjoy the wedding. And
if you see somebody in a mother of the bride dress, that'll be me.
congratulations. Congratulations. It's a beautiful part of the country, and I mean it's really like paradise up here. So enjoy your
in late June, right?
Yeah, perfect. It's gonna be beautiful. Yeah.
Okay.
Steve, thanks again for making this documentary.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And you think you would show this sometime at the end of April, or
I will show it whenever you feel like I guess the idea is that maybe this would have more impact for streaming. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what our PR company was thinking. That would be the best.
That's fine. Yeah, and I agree with that. Personally, that's what I would do. But I'm always willing to do whatever's requests are preferred by the film community, the team. And so, but I agree. And so this would go on the day or the day following, like let's say when it's streaming premiere. That way, people can go from this conversation and directly watch the film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. I appreciate
Thanks for putting up. It was a very, very. This was a very chaotic, stressful day. So I wanted to make sure that I got here and was able to focus. And I hope it wasn't so painful for you guys.
Well, you should tell Leon to do a screening at Bard.
There you go. That's a great idea. I know.
Actually, I should contact Leon and ask him to do that.
Sure. And
or you should, are you teaching there?
I'm not. No. I work at a radio station. God forbid. No. But and I didn't ever even get a degree from Bard, so I should have said that from the but I think that would be an awesome thing to do. Yeah. And I think of course there would have a lot of interest with the students. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So all right.
I'll make a note. I'll do that. Good idea. All right. Thank you, Adam.
All right. Have a really nice. Yeah. Thank you for coming on, Ann, and have a great weekend, guys.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.